Afghanistan, a land of breathtaking beauty steeped in history. Its rugged mountains and fertile valleys have borne witness to the rise and fall of empires, earning it the solemn title Graveyard of Empires. For centuries, Afghanistan has stood at the crossroads of civilizations, its strategic location a source of both promise and peril. This strategic importance has also been the catalyst for recurring conflict, shaping Afghanistan's destiny in profound ways. From the conquests of Alexander the Great to the Great Game between the British and Russian empires, outside powers have long sought to control this landlocked nation. In the late 20th century, the Soviet invasion and subsequent civil war left Afghanistan scarred and unstable. This set the stage for the rise of the Taliban, a hardline Islamist group that seized control of most of the country in the 1990s. But the world would soon turn its attention to Afghanistan for a different reason: the horrific events of September 11, 2001. The attacks on American soil, orchestrated by Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda, had deep roots in Afghanistan. The Taliban regime, harboring bin Laden and his terrorist network, refused to hand him over to the United States. In response, a US-led coalition launched Operation Enduring Freedom on October 7, 2001. The initial phase of the war was marked by swift military victories. With the support of Afghan allies, particularly the Northern Alliance, the US toppled the Taliban regime in a matter of weeks. Kabul, the capital city, fell in November 2001, followed by the Taliban stronghold of Kandahar in December. A sense of hope and optimism swept through Afghanistan as a new chapter seemed to begin. Hamid Karzai, a Pashtun leader, was appointed as the head of an interim government, tasked with the daunting challenge of rebuilding a shattered nation. However, the early optimism was tempered by the realization of the immense task ahead. Years of conflict had devastated Afghanistan's infrastructure, economy, and social fabric. Corruption was rampant, hindering reconstruction efforts. As the years passed, the initial focus on counter-terrorism shifted towards nation-building. The US and its allies poured billions of dollars into development projects, aiming to rebuild Afghanistan's institutions, economy, and security forces. Yet the Taliban, far from being defeated, regrouped in the mountainous border regions of Pakistan. They launched a persistent insurgency, exploiting the Afghan government's weaknesses and the porous border. In 2009, US President Barack Obama ordered a surge in American troops to combat the resurgent Taliban. The goal was to reverse the Taliban's gains, bolster the Afghan government, and create conditions for a negotiated settlement. The surge, however, achieved mixed results. While it degraded the Taliban's capabilities in some areas, it also came at a heavy cost. The conflict intensified, leading to a significant increase in casualties, both among Afghan civilians and US and coalition forces. By 2011, recognizing the unsustainability of a prolonged military presence, the US began a gradual drawdown of its forces. The focus shifted towards training and equipping Afghan security forces, with the aim of handing over security responsibilities to the Afghan government. The withdrawal of US and NATO forces created a power vacuum that the Taliban were quick to exploit. Despite years of training and billions of dollars in aid, the Afghan security forces proved incapable of resisting the Taliban's advance. In a lightning offensive that caught many by surprise, the Taliban swept across the country in a matter of weeks. City after city fell to the insurgents, culminating in the fall of Kabul on August 15, 2021. The rapid collapse of the Afghan government and the chaotic scenes of Afghans desperately trying to flee the country shocked the world. It marked a humiliating end to America's longest war, raising serious questions about the effectiveness of the two-decade-long intervention. The international community reacted with a mixture of condemnation and cautious engagement. Foreign aid, which Afghanistan heavily relied on, was largely suspended. Many countries refused to recognize the Taliban government, citing concerns over human rights and terrorism. 2 years after the Taliban takeover, Afghanistan faces a dire humanitarian crisis. Conflict, drought, and economic collapse have left millions on the brink of starvation. Over half the population requires humanitarian assistance. Food insecurity and malnutrition rates are alarmingly high. The healthcare system is on the verge of collapse. Afghanistan faces a multitude of challenges. the Taliban have imposed harsh restrictions, particularly on women and girls. Women are largely excluded from public life. The economy is in ruins, unemployment is rampant, and the banking system is paralyzed. The Taliban's ban on opium cultivation has deprived many farmers of their livelihoods. The security situation remains volatile. The Islamic State Khorasan province continues to pose a significant threat. The international community faces a complex dilemma in Afghanistan. On one hand, there is a moral imperative to address the dire humanitarian crisis and prevent further suffering. On the other hand, there are serious concerns about the Taliban's human rights record, particularly their treatment of women and girls. The Taliban's ideology and policies, rooted in a strict interpretation of Islamic law, are at odds with international norms and values. Their restrictions on women's rights have been widely condemned as gender apartheid, drawing comparisons to the Taliban's previous rule in the 1990s. The question of sanctions and recognition remains a point of contention. While some argue that sanctions are necessary to pressure the Taliban to change their behavior, others contend that they are counterproductive, harming ordinary Afghans and hindering aid delivery. The issue of recognizing the Taliban government is equally fraught. While some countries, particularly in the region, have engaged with the Taliban, formal recognition remains elusive. The international community is grappling with the question of how to engage with the Taliban without legitimizing their rule. As Afghanistan enters a new chapter in its tumultuous history, it is essential to reflect on the legacy of the 20-year war and the complex challenges that lie ahead. The conflict has left indelible scars on Afghan society, with millions displaced, traumatized, and mourning the loss of loved ones. The war's human toll is immeasurable. Hundreds of thousands of Afghans, both civilians and combatants, lost their lives. The conflict also took a heavy toll on US and coalition forces, with thousands of soldiers killed and many more suffering from physical and psychological wounds. The failure of nation-building efforts in Afghanistan is a stark reminder of the complexities of intervention in fragile states. Despite billions of dollars in aid and years of effort, the Afghan government remained weak, corrupt, and heavily reliant on foreign support. The future of Afghanistan remains uncertain. The Taliban, now in control, face a daunting task of governing a country ravaged by decades of war, poverty, and instability. The international community, while grappling with difficult choices, has a responsibility to continue providing humanitarian assistance and engaging constructively to promote stability and human rights. The war in Afghanistan may be over, but its repercussions will continue to be felt for generations to come. The quest for peace, stability, and a brighter future for the Afghan people remains a distant dream, a reminder of the enduring human cost of conflict. The story of Afghanistan is a poignant reminder of the human cost of war and the enduring challenges of peace building. As we bear witness to the unfolding humanitarian crisis, it is imperative that we do not turn away from the plight of the Afghan people. This is a time for empathy, not apathy. It is a time for action, not indifference. We must demand that our leaders prioritize diplomacy, humanitarian aid, and the protection of human rights in Afghanistan. Support organizations working on the ground to provide food, shelter, healthcare, and education to those most in need. Raise awareness about the situation in Afghanistan and advocate for policies that promote peace and justice. Let us not allow the people of Afghanistan to be forgotten. Their resilience, their dignity, and their aspirations for a better future deserve our unwavering support.